It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. Guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
Welcome to Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcast podcasted from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. My name is Lewis. I am the host of the show, a resident of Auckland, but from Wellington. And I mention that because I was down there a week before last for what's going to be one of those weeks of one's life that one remembers forever, in that my grandmother unexpectedly found out she was terminal with cancer. Because of COVID, she was kind of missed in the medical system. It had been around or been inside her for probably a couple of years. I guess you can look at that two ways. It's probably a blessing in hindsight that the medical system didn't kick in then, and someone that age didn't have to go through cancer treatment, which she elected not to pursue, or I don't think she actually could at this late stage. So my grandmother Dorothy, who I used to find quite delightful up until very recently, referred to elderly people in the third person because she was so full of life and so able and out and about, and had her faculties and her physical health, which is why this was such a shock to all of us. God, I'd imagine especially her. So the week before last, I spoke to my guest last week. Of course, I didn't talk about this, but the week before that, I'd been down in Wellington because, as I say, things had happened very quickly, and it got to a point where if someone needed to be with her every day. So I was the first person to live in with her. I had lots and lots and lots of very practical things to do, like establishing systems for all that yummy soup people bring, putting all those flowers and vases and whatnot, but then also being there for my grandmother, who wasn't present a lot of the time because of what she was going through physically. There were moments and flashes, but I certainly didn't try and have any D&M, meaning deep and meaningful moments with her. We had a few flashes of little bits of conversation, but then I left, as one has to, as the grandson, and then the next family member who could. By the way, it's a blessing and a curse these days that we increasingly live farther and farther. Is that further and further? Who cares? We live a long way away from the rest of family these days, because at this stage it's just my grandmother living down in Wellington. So next down, who also lives in Auckland, was who lives down south, was my auntie. She was there for a few days, and then my mother has been there, been looking after my grandmother since, who has been in a hospice since last week, and just got the message today when I was in a very bland meeting about something in academia called your PBRF, that during that 25 minutes at 3:15 p.m, my grandmother Dorothy Louise Waring, former long-term primary school teacher, a lot of her time at school, passed away with my mother and her brother, being my grandmother's brother, my great-uncle, in the room. So for me, having such a young family, my mother had me at 19, and I think my grandmother was only kind of mid-40s when I was born. I haven't really had to deal with death close up to me, that close up to me. The closest I probably had thus far is a friend in high school who took his own life a few years after we'd sort of lost contact with each other. So I'm lucky in that regard, but it is inevitable, and no one in my family's getting any younger from here on in. I didn't mean to tell as much of this story at once. I think I'll just keep recording. I think it's a universal topic. If I can inject a little bit of humour into this, funnily enough, my guest today, Olivia Shivas, has an episode of her fantastic podcast she made with a couple of mates called The Eternal Curse of Sad Piano Music. And I feel like if there ever needed to be some sad piano music, it was where I just ended up about a minute ago, isn't it? In it. So this hasn't really hit me properly. In fact, you guys hearing me get a little bit emotional is the first time that's happened since I found out, God, only an hour and a half ago, but it'll come. And so Olivia, the catalyst for her coming on the show, my guest for this episode is said podcast she made called What's Wrong With You. Olivia is a disabled person or a wheelchair user, either or both. The reason I highlight that is language is really interesting and how language changes. So I hope I have those descriptions correct. But anyway, the three people who made the show are all disabled people who made a podcast for other people to kind of understand their world, and it is fascinating. It's funny, it's heartfelt, it's really confronting at points, but not too often, which is what makes it such a great podcast, that whole kind of like inform, educate and entertain. So there's a sugar pill there with the humour and so on. It's just a great show. And then as a result, I contacted them and said, hey, does one of you want to be on the panel at my podcasting summit event, which you guys, some of you regular listeners will know about, which I held a few weeks ago. And Olivia put her hand up. And then I left it a few weeks after that to get over that event, and then asked her to come up and chat with me. She used to be a student in our school, so there's a bunch of connections there, and she very much said yes. She's a very, very, very generous guest, as you'll hear. Olivia also does a key role at Stuff. We talk about that. We talk a little bit about her time in the degree, which was about 10 years ago, which is probably when I started on this career. And I'm going to say the name of her show again, their podcast again. It's put out via Stuff. It's called What's Wrong With You. There's key categories that each episode falls into. Disability and childhood. Please Don't Break My Wheelchair. That's disability and travel. Unapologetically me. Disability and self-image. Disability and dating. Disability and faith. And disability and leadership, and then the one that I riffed on earlier on, episode 7, the final episode, The Eternal Curse of Sad Piano Music, Disability and the Media. Thank you for coming and chatting, Olivia. You can like my show on Verbal Highs podcast on the Facebook, Verbal Highs on Twitter, and other places, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. God, if you're listening to a podcast, you probably know where to find it and how to like it, but it's nice to get a koha of a like. Love to your grandmothers.
This is Dr. Tannen's Verbal Highs.
Oh my God. Was that a... Oh my God. Did the through?
There was some that wasn't properly. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh wait, don't include that on the podcast.
Damn it. That was going to be a great intro.
We were like, everyone knows. It's not that on the...
Okay, I won't put it on. Damn it. So have you read, this is a long shot, because you probably haven't, but have you heard of a book called Yes Man?
I know the movie with Jim Carrey. Is it the same?
So what's the premise in the film? Can you remember?
He just says yes to everything.
Right. So when I asked you to do this, I was like, you seem so busy, but you strike me as someone who seems to say yes to...
I do, but I also say no to some things.
Okay, yeah. I'm sure you do. but I was more meaning that you seem to lead a really busy life.
Yes.
Yeah. Welcome.
It's quite nice being on the other side, actually. I feel a lot more relaxed.
I have the opposite, because I've done this for so many years in different ways that when I get on that side, it feels really weird. And I had to do something on BFM recently, and it was genuinely weird not being the interviewer. I think there's more pressure on your side, so...
Yeah, maybe, because I guess you always think of really good things to say after the interview's done. That's also a fear of mine, but...
Okay, so we start, like I said, it's loosely a bio piece, so we'll start with, where are you from? What part of New Zealand did you grow up in? Auckland, born and bred? Or?
Yes. Grew up in like Mount Albert and Point Chev area with my family. I usually also say that I've lived in 2 other countries because they were quite significant parts of what made me who I am today.
Yeah.
So my mum is Chinese Malaysian. So when I was 13, my family and I lived over in Malaysia for 6 months.
Yeah.
And we were kind of doing voluntary / like missionary type work at a school for kids with disabilities.
Yeah.
And so my younger brother and I, we did like correspondence school.
Yeah.
And then in the afternoons during the school days, we would help volunteer in the classrooms, running activities with the kids,
Yeah.
helping feed them lunch, simple things like even helping kids like put on their shoes when they left, went to go home, and just being really involved in the school there. So that was really cool. That was quite a big, significant thing for me.
I want a reasonably shallow response to that, because Chinese Malaysian, the first thing I think is food. I'm from Wellington, so it's sort of like the second spiritual home of the Laksa.
Yeah.
Does your mum cook that food, and does she cook it well?
She cooks amazing Malaysian food.
Yeah,
yeah.
Because it's a really interesting spot, food-wise, because of its history, right? Just even a quick Google anyone shows you the influence of all the different cultures on
Yeah,
on
you've
that
got
region.
Chinese, Indian and Malay, and then when you think about all the colonisation that happened, and you get a lot of Portuguese influence, Dutch influence.
So do you really like that food, or is it just like water to you because you're so...
Yeah, I probably take it for granted.
yeah. So that was the first second spiritual home. What was the other country you were?
I lived in Finland when I did my postgrad study, so I was an exchange student. So, so part of that opportunity came because I was studying at AUT and there was a scholarship to do inclusive journalism, so I was at the University of Helsinki for a semester, and that was really cool.
And it feels like it's almost the third spiritual home after only a year. That's amazing. So it must have been an amazing year.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. For me, that was like my first time out of home, living in a different country, just like in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know anyone, and
completely different points of reference than New Zealand once you're somewhere like that in Europe, right?
Yeah. No, super fun.
Super cold?
So, okay, I assumed it was going to be really cold, and I did not pack any summer clothes because I just pictured like freezing cold.
So you've got
Scandinavian
a huge ferry down
country.
jacket, and it's really hot.
Yes, because I was there from one semester, so it was like August to December.
Yeah.
So it was hot summer when I arrived.
Yeah.
So I had to go shopping to buy like shorts and t-shirts and stuff.
Okay, backtracking to the point of origin in New Zealand. What kind of kid were you at school, and what did you want to be when you grew up? People often at that age, it's like fireman, marine biologist.
Yeah,
you know?
I wanted to be... the first job I remember wanting to be was a makeup artist.
Yeah.
And I still like pretty things and like makeup and hair and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think the reason... I have this weird memory, and I was telling a friend about it the other day because we were talking about this. I remember when I was a kid and we went to church, I had this like little makeup, like $2 shop makeup kit.
Yeah.
And after like Sunday school, I would like do the makeup on all the girls that were younger than me just for fun. And so that was my first job I remember wanting. But since I was like maybe 10 years old, I knew I wanted to be a journalist.
That's interesting. So that's a step. They're both a step removed from each other. Do you remember what's? I mean, you might not. You were 10 years old, but do you remember what sparked that? It was something you watched or heard, or
Yep. I Mum remembers me saying I'm going to be famous one day. So I don't know. To be honest, I think fame is overrated. I don't want to be famous now, but
there aren't really that. Journalists don't really that many famous journalists.
No, unless you're Hilary Barry or John Campbell. But.
Yeah. No, you don't want to be famous.
No,
in New Zealand
I don't want to
either.
be famous. I actually have been recognised once.
Yeah.
And I was on a date, and it was a bit awkward. But I think it was quite a good ego boost.
Oh my god. Anyway, so
journalism. Why did I want to be it? So when I was around, I can't remember exact age, but 10 or 11, my friend and I were making a radio show similar to, I guess, not as professional as the setup we have now. But we just
it's years later. This didn't exist then.
Yeah. So we had a couple of little we had one mic that was a USB plugged into her old Windows computer. And we recorded what we thought was a radio show. Obviously, it wasn't live broadcast anywhere. But it was about a girl and her pet dragon.
Yeah.
So so we just recorded this. And because back then we didn't have editing software or whatever, but we would record our episodes, I say, and then we would re-record our bloopers because we couldn't cut them out. So if we actually did a real-life blooper, we'd just re-record the whole episode again, which would only be 60 seconds. So we'd go back and re-record the bloopers because everyone loves the bloopers.
Totally. And every era, every era of being that young and wanting to do something, you figure out ways to get around things you do and don't have, right, to get stuff done.
Yeah.
It sounds like you invented the podcast inadvertently.
Yeah, I think,
Who listened to it? Where did you put it?
It's a real... So it was just... Yeah, my friend just copied it onto a CD or something.
Just
and we
handed it around the block.
Yeah, well, we did listen to it a few years later.
Yeah.
And so then when I went to actually record my own podcast, I was like, I want to get hold of that audio. Yeah. It would be amazing. But we couldn't find it, which was a real shame.
That's why this story's familiar to me. It's in your podcast.
Yeah, but it was her mum that said, was listening back to our thing and said, Olivia, you'd be a good journalist one day. And it just stuck.
Yeah, right. Well, you probably, sounds like you had kind of the requisite skills anyway, communication, that sort of realm. But you stuck with that because it sounds like, I'm just guessing here, that when you finished high school, you went straight on to the comms degree here?
Yes, yeah.
So you probably heard about that a few years earlier and just set your mind on doing it, I'm guessing it?
Yeah, so I guess throughout... I still wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do when year 13 at high school.
Yeah.
Which was quite different, but I was also quite good at accounting. And I think part of me, and maybe I was encouraged to, my parents were always like, do what you want to do what you're alive and passionate about.
They say that, but then if you decide you want to join the circus.
But I think maybe doing accounting like an office-based job was maybe the more safer option.
Yeah.
In terms of, I guess, things
you
that
require... mad. That's not your temperament.
Yeah, and now that I look back, I'm like, no, I don't think I would have enjoyed that. But, yeah, so then I did all the media studies, English stuff at school and kind of, yeah. And
you got here in 2013, right? Were you? 2012.
Yeah.
Okay, and so...
That was, first year comms was 2012. And then,
For the majority of my listeners who have no context for about the next thing I'm about to say is the school that I teach in, where Olivia did the degree, we moved from a very not fit-for-purpose building.
Yeah.
It used to be a bank building down on Queen Street to what is a really flash facility still, I think, all these years later. So you lucked in that regard, right? Because the year before would have been in the old spot.
Yeah. So,
So this was brand new. This is like,
I'm so glad that, I got to spend most of my uni time here. We haven't even brought this up, but to add context, I'm sure you would in your intro, but I use a wheelchair, so mobility access is really important to me.
Yeah.
And so I remember, I don't know if you probably don't know because you wouldn't need it, but in that old building, is it called WT?
WT, yeah.
There's one disabled bathroom on all 16 floors.
Oh my God.
So I remember having exams in that building, and I'd need an extra 10 minutes just to catch the lift to use the toilet.
And you're already I don't think anyone goes into an exam with no anxiety, so that's kind of a layer of, right. That building was, I found out later, it was an old bank building, so it was only designed for a set amount of staff to kind of go out for lunch every now and again. It wasn't designed for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students.
So, I was really thrilled when this WG building, because there's accessible bathrooms on every floor.
So is that, obviously we'll talk about that, we'll get onto this topic later on, but is that only a relatively new thing that buildings and so on actually have the facilities to cope with access as it should be?
Well, the New Zealand Building Code, I would say is
building codes.
I would say is not actually fit for purpose for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
They use this term. I'm going to use inverted commas here. Reasonable accommodations.
Funny is.
But there's no really. But what does reasonable accommodation really mean? It could mean one thing to one person, but a completely different thing to someone else.
As you're no doubt aware, it sounds like a bunch of people would have, lobbied to get that wording so that it kind of doesn't mean they have to spend a lot of money if they don't have to.
Yes, basically. So depending on number of toilets in a building. It's really up to the designers or the architects or whoever's commissioning that building to decide. Because a person might say, well, we've got one bathroom on all 16 floors. That's reasonable.
No, totally. Now, I've always wanted to have a student on the podcast. I had one or two before they've fallen through, so you give me the dirt at some stage as well. But for now, what was great about the degree?
I think, just the practical side to it that I really enjoyed. I mean, before I started, in year 13, I actually did... I went to Auckland Uni to have a visit, meet with their disability advisors, and then did a little walk around the campus, and then I did the same thing at AUT. Yeah. And I remember even before that, actually, is it Massey out on the North Shore? Their campus, Albany, their campus is new as well, or new-ish, and I was kind of told, you should go there because it's all wheelchair accessible. Yeah. But it's really far, and the student kind of culture of being in the city is not the same, and I wanted to have that experience as well. Yeah, totally. So I guess, so it kind of came down to what degree I really wanted to do, and I knew the AUT one was a bit more practical, and they had that kind of specialisation to do journalism. So I guess it was a few different factors deciding to come here was the access, and also I mean my main reason was what did I actually want to do, and then access was secondary, even though it was an important factor. And I think because the AUT campus was smaller, and even though I started when this building hadn't been finished yet, that was a contributing factor.
And now, what wasn't so great? Was there anything that wasn't so great? Was there anything we could have improved on?
No, no. It seems so long ago
it
now.
Does. You know what? I thought about it when I wrote these questions. Especially, this is where I talk about age difference. Being your age, when I left uni, I was out of there and didn't really think about it. Although you are a student that returns and sees your tutors like you just did, because you're obviously a big nerd. So.
No, I have a good relationship with my lecturers.
So you haven't completely abandoned the place.
I mean, I don't know if there was anything bad or that could have been done better. I think I guess my experience was a little bit different compared to other students, maybe, because I was my family lived in Auckland, so I lived at home while studying. I was the same when I went to uni. I kind of didn't really probably experience the kind of student life living in a student hall like other students did. So I think my first 2 years I felt probably just a bit of a loner, because I would go to uni, go back home, and that was kind of it. And I was a bit of a geek. I did enjoy studying and being organised and getting assignments done before the deadline. Yeah. But it probably wasn't until the third year where I actually made friends. And I'm an extrovert. I love socialising, and that's quite important to me. So I don't know. I wish I.
Yeah, but you say that. So I'll give you my perspective again. This is the generational difference in going to uni. Don't fret, because campus culture to me doesn't really seem to exist like it used to. I think there's a lot of reasons, student funding's dropped a lot, blah, blah, blah. So my point is, maybe living in the halls, getting horribly drunk on whatever night of the week, I seem to do because I live near them. But I think what you got on campus is what everyone else gets. There isn't, what I'm meaning is the city campus here, students don't really hang out here a lot.
Yeah.
Come and go.
I guess I kind of got that when I went over to Finland, because I was living in a student hall, and I was with a bunch of other international students, and we were really well looked after. We had really cool events and parties, and that's where I kind of got that experience.
That sounds such a great place to do postgrad.
Cool. Yeah.
So what was, because this is another thing, you trained to be a journalist, and then around the time you're doing this, as most fairly well-informed people know, journalism as a vocation, the whole media industry kind of was changing quite radically, right? So what was it looking like job market-wise when you got out of the degree?
I remember when I was third year uni, and I did an internship at what was Fairfax Media at the time, which is now Stuff. Yeah. And I was doing some, working at one of the local community papers. I think it was Central Leader in Auckland.
Remember those? See, even those are gone now.
Yeah. So I was doing some local news and articles for that. And I remember at one of the story meetings, it was so this would have been 2014.
Yeah.
And so I remember then it was kind of okay, we need to start thinking about writing for Stuff. So all the articles you write for the newspaper, you got to think, how can we publish it on Stuff, the news website?
What does it even
and
mean?
back then, well, how can what we write in print for the paper be digital, be digitalized? And yeah, they were starting to talk about things like, which seems weird to think about it now because Stuff is like the most widely read news website in New Zealand. Yeah. But and then I remember people thinking like, oh, community newspapers are so important, and they are. Yeah. But why do we have to write for Stuff? Stuff, and like all this. And
I think what you're saying is that thing of like either you stay in the past and get left behind, or you adapt, right? Adapt or die.
I really remember that, and it's so it's kind of funny thinking back because now everything I write, the priority first is to go on Stuff.
Well, it's like you say now. It's
it's changed.
In not so many years, it's like, well, that's where people go now. So totally.
So. So I guess that was kind of happening. But my first full-time job out of uni was actually at Attitude Pictures. Yeah. So they're a production company that make documentaries and like video content about disabled people.
And I assume they make that series that's on TV on the weekends?
Yeah. So that's their main broadcast show, and they do digital videos as well. So I was there for...
You were directing, right?
No, I was researching, doing a little my job title was a digital producer, so most of the work I was doing like lots of social media, online, website stuff, content. So I was there for 2.5 years.
And then that title, you still got that title now. So what is that? What's that title compared to the title of journalist? Is it just a more modern take on the role? So
I was a digital producer at Attitude Pictures, and then I always knew I wanted to work in mainstream, like news. So around that time kind of started looking for jobs, and then I think it took me a good 6 months, and I applied for 25 jobs before getting the one at Stuff.
And you write all those, it takes so long, you write all those cover letters.
Yeah, and then, I mean, you can edit them a little bit. You don't have to write them from scratch.
Well, I think but when people don't get back to you, maybe that was your problem, generic cover letters. But, when people don't even get back to you, like, it's crazy. And on a bad day, it can be really deflating.
Yeah, I think out of the 25, maybe 6 or 8 came back to me with a yes or no, and I think the actual interviews I got maybe 5, I think, in person, like proper interviews. But to be honest, like when I think about like the job that I got and where I am now, like I'm so glad.
Which is your content producer for Stuff.
So after Attitude, I became a digital producer at Stuff. So that role is basically the day-to-day running of the Stuff website. I did a lot of sub-editing of wire copy for international world stories.
Oh, you're doing that for the whole site?
Yeah.
Oh my God,
so our team were doing that. A lot of like live blogging, setting, updating files with breaking news in terms of headlines and images. I did a bit of homepage editing. So when you think about like the front page of Stuff, like basically making sure that's in the best.
Visually.
Visually best. Obviously, like spelling grammar.
Like the hierarchy of a front page of the newspaper.
And that's obviously very. It's always changing and updating. So I did that for about 3 years, 3.5 years. Yeah.
But that's not the role you're doing now. You're specifically covering, what I read was covering disability and social issues in your team, right?
Yeah, so I'm on the Potiaki team. So Potiaki stands for like guard post. So that's kind of Stuff strategy to better represent all, diverse issues and other minority groups. So it's not just to increase representation, but it's to better represent these groups who haven't been...
So is your team reflective of that? Does it kind of look like a UN meeting?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a tick box exercise.
No.
But we do have the skills and the passion in the team,
Yeah, so that's kind of your beat. That's like in the old sense of the journalist, right? That's your area of reporting.
Yeah.
How much have you got to come up with a week? Is it quite a lot of content you got to come up with a week?
Really depends on the week.
Yeah.
Sometimes things come together really quickly if people want to give you comment and get back to you. Other times it's a real struggle trying to like find the right case study.
Yeah.
So it really depends, like between like 2 to 5 stories a week.
And that just ends up generally in the midst of stuff. There's not like a special kind of section for your team's work.
We do have a Potiaki section on the Stuff website.
Have a look.
Yeah, so we do have a section, and then but a lot of our stuff will also go in print because we're national roles. So I'll do stories of people based in Christchurch, Wellington, and other areas as well.
So I was thinking about this, like your role, by its very nature now, the role you're doing as a journalist involves advocacy, and it's advocacy around matters around disabled access, disabled people in general.
Yeah.
Was that always sort of a plan, or has that always been a thread you've had of being, I wouldn't say an activist, but I think activism is the right word. Like, is that just a byproduct of your role that you've embraced, or have you always kind of had that mindset with issues?
Yeah, I mean...
Do you know what I mean there?
Yeah,
like,
I think the stories that I wrote, for example, when I was studying AT, most of them were disability issues ones because I have the contacts.
Well, you've also got the deep knowledge.
Yeah, and I've got the
context.
actual experience of that as well.
Yeah.
When you think about like the... I look at issues from a different lens.
Yeah.
So I guess... I'm not saying that I've always wanted to cover disability issues, but I cover anything that I think is important.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
also,
yeah.
like, I am genuinely passionate about it, and
I've sort of cutting off a little there. Sorry, I didn't mean to. But I've had a similar thing where, without going into specifics, like you have these seemingly quite separate threads to your life that all seem to neatly come together at points, because it basically kind of makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah,
right?
and I think it was interesting because when I kind of showed interest in being on the team, there was like they purposely was like, didn't want to assume I would cover disability issues, but like, but I was like, yeah, no, I actually do, but they always encourage me to like cover other stories as well.
Yeah, that's funny. And you said when you won the Attitude Award, you never had role models in a wheelchair who could use their platform for good. And I was thinking about that, like, was there just kind of nothing in your lens growing up in terms of seeing disabled people in the media and so on?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think...
It's quite shocking, man.
The Attitude TV show was probably the only
Yeah.
thing that I could remember as a kid growing up.
Yeah. So it's analogous to, like, when I was a kid, there was 5, to me, it's analogous to... Because, you know, visibility and understanding and so on, all that, to me, you know, it's a lot of it's about visibility. You know, when I was a kid, there was 5 minutes of Te Reo TV that was on, like, Sunday morning at 7 a.m. or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
The God of the world. And what has improved, or have you seen kind of change in your lifetime? I want to talk about the podcast in a sec, but... you know, what is there? Do you see a social and cultural shift with kind of visibility of disabled people and you know, understanding from the broader public?
Yeah, I do think it is improving. We have a lot more visibility.
Yeah.
We definitely still have a way to go.
Oh, sure.
I mean, I think one big area now, which is different to when I was a kid, is like, I guess, the wide use of social media and being able to kind of like see people overseas as well. Like I follow a lot of like other disability content creators or whatever you influencers, whatever you call them on Instagram, who are wheelchair users doing like really amazing things and showing their daily lives. And for me, I find that really, I use this word, not ironic, not...
I think I know the word you're going to use.
Inspiring.
I thought you were going to say empowering.
No, well, I mean, that type of thing. But, you know, like I think it's really cool for me as a young woman with a disability to see other young women with disabilities doing cool things because...
and social, I mean, you made me think about it. Things influence other things, and perhaps, social media and so on has been one of the reasons that more mainstream traditional media has had to kind of broaden who they show, you know, because it was pretty vanilla for a lot of years, and then we had kind of better cultural representation. But I'd not thought about it. I'd not thought about that with social media. That makes so much sense that you can kind of find your lane and also find people that inspire and so on.
Yeah.
what about and the practicality? You know, you talked about going from lucky you didn't go into a building with one toilet at 100 floors compared to here. Like, is that sort of stuff getting better, or is it just still kind of slightly annoying to you when you go, this could just so easily be like this?
Yeah, I mean, every now and like for the most part, yes, things are fine, and I can navigate the world as I do, with minimal disruptions or issues. But I'd say every now and then. I don't know, I think I do have this kind of, sadly, like, low expectation of access still.
Yeah.
So I never go somewhere where I'm like, yes, this is going to be 100% accessible with no issues, anything like that. You know, I bet you do like a recce, like a dossier beforehand. I do recce. Like, it's quite funny the number of times I've actually done like a recce, for example, before a date or something like that,
sure,
because you don't
absolutely.
want anything like, you know, I don't know, just.
No,
wheelchair
admin,
access admin to like happen on a date.
First dates, I talked about exams. Forget about dates. I talked about anxiety. Yeah, for me, like, I don't want anything that's going to be slightly embarrassing or
so
off-putting.
There have been a few times. So I do have that in my head. Like, but you know, for example, like, I'd say for the most part, places are pretty good. But in terms of like restaurants, I mean, I still go to restaurants where they don't have accessible bathrooms, or like. Oh, I didn't post this. I took a video I went to the bathroom at a restaurant, and this happens quite a lot. They use the accessible bathroom as a storeroom for the rubbish bin and the mop.
It's like a Simpsons episode. Someone walks like,
actually,
sorry, lady.
Yeah, no, so you mean like this literally happened last weekend. I have a video of it. And I haven't posted it. I was going to post it on Instagram, but I haven't yet. But like, when I talk about using my platform, that's why I kind of like put stuff like that on Instagram, because I'm like, people don't know what they don't know. Well, that's and you don't want it to be like, oh, look at all this annoying disability stuff, but it's a way to raise awareness.
People don't know what they don't know is exactly what I thought when I listened to the podcast, which I learned so much about. Yeah. But before, I'm going to get onto that now. But
this is the third time you said you're going to start talking about the podcast.
But I knew. I'm laying breadcrumbs for the listeners and for you. I knew activism was the wrong word, because I've got this quote here, and I think it speaks to what you literally said just then, as well as the show. Activism is about making people listen, but advocacy, which I think is what you're doing in the show, is about. Advocacy is working on identifying solutions and inviting all parties to listen to each other's problems.
Yes.
So one of them to me is like being all kind of militant and ramming things down people's throats, but the other one is more like, hey, here's an accessible way for you to learn stuff. Because with What's Wrong With You, that's what it was for me. It was like that thing of like, again, you probably don't remember from the degree, but that idea of like, I think it was the BBC or something early back in the day, were like, content should inform, educate, and entertain. So you guys kind of got all three of that. It was a fun listen. So how did that come about? Like, I'm guessing that it was an opportunity through where you work. Yeah. But did you and Rebecca and Grace have the idea before that and then approach them?
Yeah.
Like that?
So between the three of us, we kind of had this idea to make a podcast, and we would have done, we probably would have done it anyway, whether it was with stuff or not. Yeah. So
with your one USB microphone, no editing software.
So we kind of just had this idea, and we've got a great group of friends with disabilities, and we all just like support and root for each other, and we hype each other up and just celebrate the wins and life.
So was the idea? Go on. Sorry.
Yeah. So I guess the podcast idea kind of came about from conversations we'd had with other disabled friends, and we all have backgrounds in communications, and we just thought it would be a really cool project to work on.
Because Bex, but what does Rebecca go by? Bex? I think of her formal name from her being a student here. Yeah. She prefer Bex anyway. So she's got a background here, and also she's a champion swimmer before. I think she got an injury. How did you guys? Because Grace is a bit younger. How did you guys come across her?
Yeah, I forget Grace is so much younger than us sometimes.
Grace is extraordinary. She's like, she was in the class, she's like 19 or 20 and like running a clothing line and doing this and doing that, doing TED Talks. And,
so how did we connect with her? She also got the same scholarship attitude pictures that I did. So they had these like scholarship opportunities for like students with a disability studying comms at AUT, and I was like, oh, that's designed for me.
That's very specific.
Wow,
That's really specific.
Very niche.
Yeah.
Finally something for me.
And Grace
so she got the same one, and so
Yeah.
when I was working at Attitude, she also did some like internship stuff at Attitude, and we first kind of connected then. And I just like had the like I feel like I've got quite a good intuition around people, and I was like, oh my gosh, this girl's going places.
Oh, she's amazing. I
She's
could
amazing.
tell straight away in class.
Yeah, and so she, so basically we kind of, that was our first proper kind of like interaction. I'd seen the stuff that she had her own, well, it was a blog back then, and had started to do really cool content online. And then after that, we just stayed in touch, and
The reason I asked just quickly, because I wanted to get more deep into the show, is I saw her role as producer, and she does have some cameos in the show, but what did that involve? Because it was you two hosting, right?
Yeah. So she...
Because producing can mean so many different things in different contexts.
Yeah. So it was mostly Grace and I guess, in the earlier days, figuring out what topics we wanted to cover,
Great.
how we wanted to frame them, what guests we wanted to
almost
have.
like a writer's table.
A little bit like that, yeah. And I think she really helped in terms of, I guess, the framing and the narratives in terms of how we wanted to represent disability. And she had really good contacts for some of our guests as well.
And if I could say, as someone who's just a listener to it, my guess is the broader intention or motivation or what you wanted to come from the show is that people who don't live with disabilities understand your world.
Yeah.
Because I see two things there. Like, obviously, there are just shitty people in the world who say and do shitty things, and you cover a couple of them on the podcast. But I think for the majority of people, it's wanting to kind of do the right thing, but being a bit kind of awkward or clumsy about it, right?
Yes,
Is that fair?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I feel like what's happened recently, when you talk about shifting of attitudes and how people approach disability, when people asked me for help, they'd be like, oh, can I help you? Or do you need help with that? That was kind of how they would ask me. And now I feel like the last year it's kind of changed, and I've just noticed it, but people will be like, they'll say it like, oh, I'm sure you're okay, but I just wanted to check if you needed help. Yeah. Or like they say, oh, it looks like you're doing fine. Do you need any help? Or hope this is okay to ask you. Yeah. And it's almost like, they kind of just...
Well, you're being kind of treated as more an equal rather than an other.
Yeah, and so the way they frame that is quite nice. But yeah, it's kind of funny because I am quite, and even like friends are a bit nervous of asking, like really close friends who have like, who've got no boundaries will be like, they'll just help me when they know, and that's fine. Yeah. But it's interesting because I feel like sometimes I come across as like, and I don't want to, but be like the accessibility police.
Yeah.
And so I don't want
stuff
people
around,
to be
there's stuff around consent and stuff there as well, and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
It's what you call it, again, another one of my, I laughed at such a clever title because each episode is themed. And one's called The Eternal... What is it? The Eternal Curse of Sad Piano
Music.
And I instantly knew what you guys meant with that title before I even listened, because that kind of plays into everything we've just been talking about, right?
Yeah, well, because, Grace, I think, talked about Eternal Sad Piano Music in the episode. But, our Stuff's podcast director, Adam Dunning, came up with that title for the episode, so I thought it was quite good.
And were there any topics... So you can probably reel them off now. There was religion or spirituality, I guess.
I'll go from
sex and dating. Sorry,
I was like, I'll go, because if I go from the top, I'll remember all of them. So there's like childhood and parenting, travel, identity, self-image, sex and dating, then faith and religion, leadership, and like rebuilding the systems, and then media representation.
And were there any, because they're great topics, they're all obviously very universal kind of human life topics. Just out of interest, were there any that were tabled and shortlisted that were missed, or did you get every topic you wanted? Like, was there one where you were like, oh, should we do this topic or that topic, or did you cover everything you wanted to in the show?
Yeah, I think we did set out to cover everything we wanted to. If we wanted to cover another one, we'd just been like, oh, do another episode. Humour,
right? Important. Because that's the other thing I was going to say is with in terms of messaging is the sugar pill, right?
Yeah. And I think humour makes things a lot more accessible because, to be honest, like, disability is not the most...
Well, it would have got
attractive
a bit sad
nice
piano without the humour.
Yeah.
You must have learnt stuff along the way as well. It's a bit of a cliche question, but I'm sure you ended up listening to and dealing with a bunch of people and ideas that people you'd not spoken to. So what did you take from it?
In terms of, in terms of disability, or actually, I learned...
Because it seems like you guys took... What I'm getting at there is it seems like you took on a lot of topics, and I don't know how long it took to make, but it was probably a relatively short period of time. So, yeah, it was quite a process, right? I'm sure you would have come out the other end.
Making it itself was probably the biggest learning process for me.
Yeah.
It was my first podcast. But in terms of, I guess, disability...
No, I didn't mean in general.
I think...
Doesn't all have to be about disability.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the bit that kind of, made me think the most and I guess reflect on my own experience of disability is when, in the faith episode, Latifah, who's amazing, is this young Muslim woman with a disability. We talked a lot about intersectionality, and when I asked her what's more difficult, being Muslim or disabled, she said Muslim straight away, really fast.
Crazy, right?
And honestly, I got shivers. I've got shivers just saying that again. And I think, you never really know what people experience until you hear their story.
Yeah.
And I think I took a lot from that.
And also, you realise as well, which is totally part of kind of disability advocacy and so on, that with something like that, I think, well, that's it. You can't treat people as a collective because everyone's got their own unique human experience. Aside from categories or subcategories or whatever that they may fall into. There were a lot of those. There was moments of those like that were really powerful. I think there was another one, and I'm going to butcher this, but it was along the lines of you guys discussing, something along the lines of if you could not have your disability your disability. That's amazing. It's really well done. What about public response? Have you it's like sometimes you don't hear from a lot of your audience, right? But how's it been received?
Yeah, it was really amazing. I got so many emails. So the first episode was about parenting and families and raising a child with a disability, and then also being a parent with a disability. When it first kind of launched, I got a lot of emails from parents themselves of people who had kids with disabilities who either born or acquired a disability, and just hearing about their journey, about their story, saying it's the first, thank you so much. First time I've been able to relate to a story like this.
One thing really strong in that episode was the fact that a parent has to kind of deal with it. It's, to be blunt, not what they expected the parenting was going to be. Yeah. So, it's I hadn't really thought about that. It's quite, and the sort of the guilt or the whatever around, how you feel as a parent through different phases of that. Yeah. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So the topics, I just jotted down a few things that I took from it, and I could have gone a lot longer. The world isn't designed with disabled people kind of in the conversation, and stuff has been good in that regard from what I've seen, right? You've helped them with their Wellington offices and so on. But you did, there was a Christmas party that you couldn't go to because you couldn't get into the building. I'm sorry, it's just a weird...
Where did I talk about this?
I do my research.
You did. You really dug out that story.
Yeah.
It was my first year.
First Christmas party.
Yeah, and my first big corporate Christmas party, and I was so excited. And the venue they had picked, I think they had got it for free or was really, really cheap, so they just decided to go with it. Yeah. And
it had 3 flights of...
and so it was, and then...
Did people bring you down snacks?
Well, no. Well, they carried me up the stairs.
Oh, right.
So it was... But the thing is, this is not a one-off incident. This happens all the time.
That's what... Yeah,
it's kind of like you've got two bad choices. You're stuck between two bad choices or two choices that make you feel a bit crap. It's like, do I miss out and not go?
Yeah.
Or do I say, yes, I want to go, and then have to deal with all the admin of organising people to carry me up the stairs, feeling bad, even though I shouldn't, that people have to carry me up the stairs. Yeah. And then, in the end, I did go, and the bouncers just carried me up and down the stairs, I think.
Did they?
and then I just didn't drink anything because I was thinking, if there's stairs to get up here. I doubt there's an accessible toilet. So it's like all this other kind of like admin you kind of mentally have to think about, prepare for, along with dealing with the physical situation of requiring access.
Another example, sort of full circle with different topics we've been talking about, is, because something I never would have thought about, you wrote an article about something like Kiwi Build. How's this going to relate to disability issues? Well, you found that the scheme kind of accidentally discriminates, right?
Accidentally.
No, tell me. I didn't read the whole article properly, but I was skimming over it last night.
Well, yeah.
What do you mean? Why would it not be accidentally? Wouldn't be on purpose, would it?
Well, no, not on purpose, but I guess I feel like any kind of like, government program with large monetary investment.
Fair play. Yeah.
Should have disabled people involved in the consultation.
Should have a cross section of New Zealand's community represented.
Yes, considering it's 24% of New Zealanders.
Yeah.
And that doesn't include the ageing population, families, young families with babies in prams, people who have temporary injuries or disabilities, and things like that. So, it's flawed.
Has anything come from something like that when you write those articles? I'm always interested in, like, advocacy is so important, but to see effect come from things?
Yeah, not that particular one, because it was kind of an interesting situation with that one, because I kind of, like, had started looking into it for me personally.
Yeah.
And then I was telling my boss about it. I was like, hang on, this is, like, quite a massive gap. This isn't a newsworthy story. So then I kind of went down the route of writing the story. And so beforehand, I'd already contacted my local MP, and they put me on to the housing minister, and then I'm still waiting to hear a response from them. But when I went down the journalism route to write an article, I heard back from the housing minister straight away.
That's what I was meaning, straight away.
Yeah. So, but in terms of a solution, there's no solution. It has not been resolved. But also, I think, the people involved just don't have the knowledge or the right understanding in terms of disability. That's why you need, actual disabled people and proper consultants involved in the whole process from the beginning. A time when, I think when an article has actually, put together some kind of action or, or response. This was a few years ago, but IHC, they're a disability support provider, and they run homes.
They've been around forever.
Yeah. So, really unfortunate a few years ago, a few people had died in bathing accidents because there wasn't enough
short staff.
It's an under-resourced sector. It's a big issue, but basically IHC decided that they were going to ban baths and remove taps from their baths because it was a hazard. Before that, the whole thing went through court and WorkSafe. It took them to court and they had to pay a big fine. So that was kind of their solution to prevent more drownings in the bath. So, but a lot of advocates and disabled people themselves say, we shouldn't have this right of having a bath taken away with us. A good bath is so nice. It was kind of like a blanket rule to fix a problem that wasn't the main actual problem. And to be fair, I'd say they are under-resourced. They do need more funding by Ministry of Health. Each disabled person has very specific care needs, and it's very case by case. So it is a complex situation. But then IHC kind of said, look, we kind of base that decision based on the WorkSafe court case, blah, blah, blah. I published the story, got responses from disabled people in the community, blah, blah, blah. And then, the week after, WorkSafe came out saying,
wow, that's great.
Said something look.
Nothing like public pressure, right?
Saying, look, we don't support banning baths. That's been kind of misrepresented. And so then
we've got a PR disaster on our hands.
So again, I don't think that whole thing has been resolved in terms of there's still not enough funding. But
I realise what I said before is a little daft in that you can't expect one article on Kiwi Build to suddenly solve that whole problem. Yeah, because often it's about a slow process of chipping away at topics, kind of like.
And I think because I'm also probably too much of an optimist, maybe a bit naive to think and I'm really passionate about what I write about, so I try not to take, the stories that I write about like too personally if like big change doesn't happen, because I think to some extent a lot of journalists go into it because they have a sense of justice.
No,
and
it wouldn't happen most of the time. I realised that when I
accountable.
said it.
So, but in saying that, like amazing work has come out of investigations and work journalists have done.
Absolutely.
But I think for me, I've got to just be like, I'm doing my job, I'm playing my part, and whether or not it makes a real life difference, just having that visibility
it's all making a difference. It's all making a difference. I'm not saying it's not making a difference. Jesus, we're meeting somebody here. So it sounds like a byproduct along the way is that you're getting really schooled in kind of like civic matters and laws, and it's sounding like a lot of this involves just learning about how systems and so on tick, right?
Yeah.
Would you guys do it? Has there been... Well, I guess a double-barreled question here. I think I know the answer to the first one. Is that do you feel that the podcast was a particularly effective way of delivering the messages that you did in that show?
Yes.
Great. Have you talked about trying to do one with a different slant or angle, or have you guys, it was just too much work?
No, I'd love to do another season. Yeah. But we'll just have to see what happens in terms of time and capacity. Would build on what we've already done. I feel like the first season was quite a good kind of introduction and put across some of those topics and issues and framing of disability. There's definitely more things.
How long do you reckon it took? I've not thought to ask that.
So for
it's a lot of work. It's a big series.
Yeah. So for me, I was working on it full time. I was really, really grateful that I kind of was on a secondment type thing away from my digital producing job. Yeah. And I worked on that 4 or 5 months, 4 or 5 months full time.
I think that you're not going to use lucky because that's totally the wrong word, but I think that's really great that you had that support of your workplace to do that. Because, it's a lot of mahi, right?
Yeah, when I suggested it, they were just, supportive right from the beginning. And, I think because I'd been at stuff for quite a few years and I don't want to... and I guess I've kind of proven myself.
They knew you weren't going to fuck it up.
Yeah.
So Adam seems a nice fellow. I met him at the summit. Yeah. Good to work with.
Yeah, no, he was really great. I think, because you're always kind of nervous. Again, I don't want to be like a hater to all non-disabled people, but you always
whoa, hey, whoa.
But
you wait till 50 minutes to drop that?
No, I'm not, obviously, but sometimes you do get a bit nervous about how some people come into a project like this from a non-disabled perspective.
Yeah.
But he really got it from the beginning, and so it was really, really cool. In terms of, he trusted us and how we wanted to frame it, and then, we obviously trusted him back with our narratives, and he went through all my scripts, and he had ideas even I didn't think of, so...
You get that real sense of you guys whisking around everywhere in the show. It's really fun to listen to. But you said something at the summit that totally cracked me up. I can't remember, you might not even remember saying this. You said something about how you were all out in your wheelchairs, but if there's normally more than 3 wheelchairs, it's like an escape or something?
From the ward.
From the ward. I just found that so funny. I just listened to Adam's, because Name to Face and everything, because I've listened to a bunch of those stuff podcasts. I just listened to that Centrepoint one that came out.
Yes.
Which is like, again, the age, that's a bit before your time, but kind of really interesting, totally weird part of New Zealand history. Yeah. But he's great. He's a great storyteller. I can see why he would have been an asset.
Yeah.
Because he's actually on mic in that as well, right? And then... you won quite a big award, right? Was that unexpected?
The Attitude Award?
Yeah. Because you won a category. You won,
I won the
Enterprise, but then you won the main,
the Supreme Award.
You won Best Actor at the Oscars.
So I'm Best Disabled Person in New Zealand currently.
That's great. Do they give you a trophy with different name on it each year?
No, I got a trophy. I got 2 trophies. No, it was really, really cool, really exciting to be acknowledged for the work that we do. And to be honest, it was kind of interesting because usually, because it was the awards was done during COVID times, we didn't get like a black tie
you were locked out of that one too.
Event, and I didn't get to wear a sparkly dress and do an acceptance speech.
You were on Zoom in your sparkly dress.
Well, acceptance speech on stage with a gala dinner.
Oh, no.
But what they did instead is they kind of went to surprise the winners.
Did they knock on your door like it was 7 sharp?
A little bit, everything was filmed.
Yeah.
Great.
God, how awkward. Sorry, I shouldn't say that.
No, but I mean, it was great. I still got the surprise. Yeah. But it was kind of funny because I did feel a little bit sad. I didn't get that experience of winning the award on stage and lots of people clapping for me.
Yeah.
But in saying that,
But hey, look, with
it wasn't about me, you know? And so I think in terms of the award, it kind of made me think like the reason why we did it was to benefit the wider disability community and all disabled people. And if someone listens to that podcast and think, oh, there's that person in a wheelchair, maybe I should consider hiring them, that will make that, you know, that's why we made it.
Totally. Or they just have as I went back to when I first started talking about the show, they just have a better way to approach things. I mean, that's a total win to begin with.
Yeah.
Or something big like that.
Yeah.
Hey, look, you know, awards in person, they're dangerous. Someone could have got punched, you know. It's been a bad year or two. So there was a thing in Stuff Nation, I assume you're behind this, and the questions were, what's the biggest misconception people have about living with a disability? I'm sure you would have written this question.
I don't know.
wouldn't you?
Yeah, I probably did. I don't know. What is the biggest misconception?
Sad piano music. I think that might be it.
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's definitely changing, but I don't know how to like sum it up into one sentence, but it's...
You don't have to. We've got like minutes and minutes and minutes.
What is the main misconception? I don't know. It's just kind of maybe we don't want to achieve the same things as... we don't have the ability to achieve the same things as our non-disabled peers.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a super
Or if
simplified
you do,
version,
it's an extraordinary achievement.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
And if we do, it is an extraordinary achievement. So, like... But yeah, that covers like lots of things. Like, I mean, this is an example I kind of give, which is kind of hilarious. But I remember when I graduated at uni and you crossed the stage with everyone else, my dad particularly told me afterwards, oh, Olivia, you got an extra big clap, you know? And I didn't realise that because I was...
Might have been because the teachers really liked you.
Yeah, but like, Dad like made the point to tell me like, it's probably because I was in a wheelchair. Like, oh, how nice, it's still in a wheelchair.
Like your dad has a good sense of humour. Is that a fair call?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think... when you have a disability, that kind of like weird disability humour kind of like comes out when you're with close friends, and that's what we've tried to put across in the podcast, which I think
came
we do.
Across really well.
But yeah.
It was the humour. Yeah, the humour was a big part of why I really particularly enjoyed it. So just a weird sort of side topic, because I'm a bit of a cook and so on, and so I've seen that you're a keen baker.
Oh yeah.
Is that ongoing?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's your specialties?
I don't know if I have a specialty, but anything kind of like that involves icing or decorating with icing. I like doing that.
I thought you were meaning... sorry, I was going to say like more like the eating side of it. So you actually get into quite artistic... Wow.
Yeah. Our neighbours gave us a massive bag of lemons this week, so I made a few lemon loaves, took them into the office.
Are they any of your creations on your Insta? Any of your muffins?
Yeah, I do.
So do you do like sort of patterns or characters or stuff, that sort of stuff? Is it that intricate?
No, not that intricate. Yeah.
Pretty intricate. And so baking's just been something you've just done for years. I'm the same.
Yeah, well, my mum's really into cooking, right? So I think part of it is the hospitality side, and I enjoy the actual process of baking and cooking because I find it therapeutic. I like other people enjoying it as well.
I find John Kerwin. I'm not at all into rugby, but there were those ads he did for depression a few years ago that I thought were really good, where he talked about being an active relaxer. That's me. Like if I bake or I cook, I do a lot of cooking from scratch. I put a podcast on. Yeah. Like to me, that unless I'm real tired, like that's more enjoyable, relaxing to me than going home and sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
Enjoy that. Well, it's been a lovely chat. You went and saw Greg, and Ritza, your old teachers.
Oh yes.
You caught up. You're catching up with Greg afterwards, aren't you?
Ritza was before this, and now Greg's next.
I didn't know if Ritza has Ritza been here that long. Or she's going to listen to this.
She better. Hi, Ritza.
So 2015. Wow, time flies. That's everything. No, cool. Thank you.
Thanks, Lewis.
No worries.